Every time I look at the peak design that is our boy Seviper, I think to myself, wow, it would be nice if this thing was any good. So today the plan is simple, make Seviper pop off somehow. Its stat spread is really interesting, having the solid base 100 in both attack and special attack, but then everything else makes that pretty irrelevant. It doesn't really matter if you can be a decently hard-hitting mixed attacker if you aren't close to being fast, along with abysmal bulk. While the one thing it does have going for it is a pretty solid move pool opening the door for offense on either side, today I'm going to be working with a physical snake that can first set up with Coil. With a nice boost to our attack, defense, and even accuracy, we might even be able to bust out a Trailblaze, Seviper's only way to boost up speed. Please Game Freak, give Seviper Scale Shot like you did for Arbok. What the hell's up with that? With a jolly nature and max speed investment, after just one Trailblaze, we become faster than notably quick mons like max speed Iron Valiant, if it doesn't get a Quark Drive boost, which honestly is kind of impressive. So the accuracy boost that comes with the Coil actually ends up helping out a ton when it comes to Seviper's best way of doing damage in Gunk Shot. The 120 power stab poison move is super strong because it's only 80% accurate. But after just one boost from a Coil, it becomes almost impossible to miss. We've also got Terra ground boosted Earthquakes for hard-hitting solid coverage, and in a time where it feels like Game Freak hates Seviper, it's finally time to see if we can get this thing to be as badass as it looks. Look, I'm going to be taking this time now to submit my formal request to Game Freak to please, for the love of God, give Seviper something. I don't know if it needs a buff, it needs a mega evolution, just an evolution or a form or something. Please, nothing this sick deserves this type of disrespect. Thank you for your time. But today we're showing some love to the Viper anyway, because that's what we do around here. And if that sounds like a fun time to you, consider hitting that subscribe button. It's free, it only takes you a second. You probably won't regret it. And with that, let's jump into the match. Alright, so my opponent decides to lead off with the Hisuian Electrode. Straight up LeBall James out here. I guess this thing definitely does no ball. Anyway, I've got a Gligar, and I am just here to, you know, I could probably take an attack from it. It can't Volt Switch, which is fine. They do go for a Giga Drain, and that is going to get a critical hit, and that hurts. I'm like, youch. That, you know, that kind of ruins Gligar right from the start. I'd take more than half from that. I do get up my Stealth Rock, but then I realize I could still get some good value out of the thing. So instead of staying in here, I am just going to end up swapping into the Snowflake. I'm Assault Vested. I got that shit on. You can't tell, but I do have a nice fashionable vest. Now, they just Giga Drain again. Does get another crit. I don't know what buddy's feeding this freaking Electrode, but it does a lot. Now, as they end up going for the Volt Switch, that does at least reveal that it's not Choice Specs, which is nice to know. But at this point, they end up switching into the Torkoal. Now, Torkoal on this team doesn't seem to be sun-based, but as I end up just going for the Freeze Dry here, I just want to try to play it safe. They end up swapping into Turtle, who obviously is, you know, it tickles him just a little bit. Now, I also don't really have much need to stay in here. I figure they probably just set up Stealth Rock, but there's not much I can do to the thing, so I'm just going to go right back into the Gligar. Now, this combo of these two fellas, they work pretty, they're best friends. They wouldn't, you know, be, if the Cragnole touches, needless to say, there'd be no hugs between the friends, but they swap easily between each other. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about most of the time, but they end up going for the Will-O-Wisp as I swap in the Gligar. Needless to say, I can switch between the two easily, and while the Wisp kind of sucks, I'm just going to end up going for the knockoff here. It's going to at least get rid of an item. Turns out to be heavy-duty boots. Turtle and the Tims no longer, and they do just end up clicking the Flamethrower, which I am able to live at 11, which is funny because now, after the burn recoil, I'm chilling at 1, which feels pretty good because this will at least give me an opportunity. If they don't click Rapid Spin here, that would be kind of convenient, but at least I can go for an Earthquake for a little more chip damage. Sadly, however, they are going to Rapid Spin and not only knock me out, but get rid of the Stealth Rock on a turn where, you know, now I can't at least get those up any longer. So, while that's a bit unfortunate, Gligar goes down. I can have a Revenge Switch now to try to get a little something going. Now, this team is full of complete shenanigans to try to set up. Now, I decide to bring in the Latios. The reason for that is because I first of all think that this turtle probably does not want to stay in here. And while I am a physical variant, a Will-O-Wisp would suck, but I figure that surely they swap out, right? They have a couple different answers for this thing. But I'm going to Dragon Dance here as that draws in the Clefable. Now, Clefable could also be not that great, considering it could just potentially be unaware. But the great part about this Latios is everybody expects special attacking, right? It just obviously makes way more sense. But as I go for the Dragon Dance there, it does reveal I'm physical. And I do still have the Terra in the back pocket. So while I would ordinarily just get my shit bopped in by the moon, I can now just go for the Terra Steel. And while I don't have any steel coverage, I am gonna, at least until this thing maybe busts out a flamethrower, I'm thinking, honestly, if it's not unaware, a Zen Headbutt's likely a 2-hit KO. With the Soul Dew, you're able to get a lot of damage with the Zen Headbutt. Plus, the best part is, that's gonna be able to get a flinch as well. I do get the flinch, which is amazing. Does just about half. I figure now while I'm in danger of a flamethrower, it doesn't kill me from this range. I go for another Headbutt, and they just opt to click the Reflect, which is fine. They're gonna set up a Reflect here, which is good. I do have a little bit of the upper hand in terms of momentum. And I decide, you know what, this probably doesn't have any coverage. I'm pretty much free to go for another DD. And that's just because even with that Reflect up, if I get 2 Dragon Dances, we're still going to be pretty scary. But unfortunately for me, they do go back into the Torkoal here. Now, this thing sets back up the Sun. I am obviously now in danger of fire, being, you know, a homie with an axe on its head. But I get up another Dragon Dance here. If I had Stealth Rock up still, that would have been really nice for this thing to swap in. And then maybe be in range for an Earthquake even behind the Reflect. I am just going to bust out the Earthquake here because, look, I'm still at +2 and I'm still a Latios. So it's gonna hurt, but they have other plans. They figure turns out to be Buddy's birthday. They go ahead and put the balloons on the head. Going to go for that Terra Flying, which is exactly the opposite move I wanted to see here, as I now just Earthquake looking like a fool. And while they do have the big Flamethrower boosted by the Sun, they opt to go for the Will-O-Wisp. So I was really hoping to avoid the burn on the Lati. But instead, now I'm not only, I'm set up, but I'm burnt and they have a Reflect up. So it's a bad day to be a physical Latios. And while at least I'm still happy that at least they did have to commit their Terra. Honestly, that still feels like pretty good value for me. Now I go for a Zen Head, but I'm still thinking, hey, I can get some damage. I can maybe get another flinch, have a fun time. Nope, it just misses. I forget the Zen Headbutt does that. It definitely, it can miss. So they can now just hit me with a Flamethrower. After the burn chip, I am still alive somehow, just barely hanging on. I figure might as well just hit it with one more Psychic Forehead to the balloons and at least get a little chip on my way out. Does knock it below half, doesn't do anything though, which is great. And they also are able to take advantage of this opportunity to set up Stealth Rock on a turn where I do just go down now to the burns. A good play on their end. The hazard control has been on their side, and down goes the Latios, sadly. And while it wasn't Buddy's day, at least I got some chip on the Clefable. I forced the Terra from the Torkoal, and now I can try a little something else. So first of all, instead of trying to set up something, I decided to just go into Young McFlurry. The ice cream machine is never broken. We're talking about Cryogonal here, because now that this thing has gone for that Terra Flying, I can just bop it with a little Freeze Dry, and that's going to take care of it, which is quite nice. Now also, I have this thing in on an opportunity to be able to Rapid Spin away the rocks if I want to. But more of the story, it's nice to just see the Torkoal out of the way. So Sunlight also just dies with the turtle, and now they can go into whatever they want. So it turns out to be the Colossal. Now, Colossal comes in and is an immediate threat, obviously, to about everything that you can click against me. I decided to just Rapid Spin here. There's not much that really wants to hard switch in. And as I go for the Rapid Spin, well, it doesn't really help my team a whole lot. It at least is going to allow me a revenge switch in here. And I really would like to try to get a couple things going. So they do finish me off with the Stone Edge, which does connect, takes care of the Cryogonal. And as I've got 3 Mons left, it's feeling like there's never been a better time. I mean, if there is a time, it's now for the Seviper to get a little something going. I bring in the Viper, and the plan is this. I can go ahead. I should be able to take 1 Earthquake from the thing if I get myself a little Coil action going. So that's exactly what I do. I'm able to outspeed. I can get a Coil that boosts my accuracy, defense, and attack. And they end up clicking the Tar Shot, which is a move that I entirely forget exists, which is kind of unfortunate. First of all, what it does, it drops your speed, but also now makes me weak to fire, which is kind of scary. But as the Reflect now wears off, the timing is perfect for me now to just go for an Earthquake with +1 attack and a whole bunch of weakness to ground. That's going to be able to take care of the Colossal, which is quite satisfying. And while the Seviper is in a decent position here, I'm now, you know, -1 speed, which is not really ideal when this is, my main plan with this thing is to try to make it fast. But as they realize their best bet is to hit me on the special side, they bring in the Orb. And while I'd love to stay and ponder the thing, they just go for the Volt Switch, gonna head out, does do a nice little chunk of damage there. However, something is waiting to take a Gunk Shot right between the eyes. Now, sadly, it turns out to be the guy who looks like it probably eats Gunk Shots for breakfast and lunch, but it doesn't do much. But what it does do is at least puts me in a spot where now I'm thinking, look, I'm coiled up. I obviously, they know I have the Earthquake coverage. And while this thing could just be unaware, I'm going to try to just click a little Trailblaze here. I have the thought in my mind that if Miss Maggie comes in with Levitate on an Earthquake, that's going to be bad news. It feels like that Clodsire set me up to try to click Earthquake. So instead, as I go for the Trailblaze, it works out because they do bring in the Mustard Hat. And the Miss Maggie comes in, I get that +1 to speed. That brings me to neutral speed. So I am just max speed on this thing. So at neutral, I'm pretty quick. I'm not faster than a Miss Maggie. unfortunately, but it turns out I am. This thing is not going to be working with max speed investment because we're about to find out why. Now I go for another Trailblaze because I figure if I can take one attack, that would be sick. And as they click a Thunder, it misses. And I'm like, hell yeah, it missed. But as soon as the item activates, I'm like, oh shit, it missed. And that activates a Blunder Policy, doubling the thing's speed. And that's going to shake things up a bit. But he's got the creative Mismagius set, and I am afraid. I am frightened of a Shadow Ball being enough to knock me out at this point. But I'm going to go for a Gunk Shot regardless. Now, it turns out they just click the Thunder again, and it misses. You can't activate another Blunder Policy, so luckily as I go for a Gunk Shot, well, it doesn't quite knock the thing out. What it does do is gets the Poison, which is absolutely clutch as hell because it's... Honestly, I'm feeling like the anticipation of it being almost in range for this Poison to knock it out. I'm like, if that knocks it out, this Seviper's in a great spot. It turns out it is going to be able to pick off the little bit of HP the thing had left. And that Thunder Miss was incredibly clutch. They probably just had Hex for their main stab damage there, so it probably wasn't enough to knock it out. So regardless though, guess what happens now? Seviper is in a position to just maybe bring it home for us. So as they go Electrode here, we've seen the damage from a Volt Twitch. It can't go for Grass Stab. I end up outspeeding with the Gunk Shot, connects because of that accuracy boost from the Coil. Shout out to the Coil for that one. And that's just going to take care of the Electrode. Didn't expect to outspeed. I'm just at +1, I believe. So it means the thing must be modest. Regardless, down goes the Electrode. And at this point, they've got 2 Mons left. It's going to first of all be the Clodsire, who young Ed comes in looking like he has absolutely no idea what the hell's going on. Honestly, Clodsire looks kind of upset. Probably a little bit more upset because an Earthquake here with the Coil is going to be enough. It's not going to be unaware, most likely just Water Absorb. Down goes the Bulbous Boy, and the final Mon being the Clefable is a nice little late game snack after we eat our actual late game snack, being a little leftovers. We're nearly at full. In comes the Clefable, who is already beat the hell up, and all I got to do is throw one more trash can at Buddy's face. Shout out to when Gunk Shot used to be the animation of just straight up hucking a trash can. That was way more fun. But regardless, down goes the Clefable, and that's going to be the end of the match there. Didn't expect the stars to align for this Seviper, but sometimes it works out for you boys. So hey, we just like to see Seviper get to do stuff, and that was a pretty interesting match. So with that, that's going to bring us now into game number 2. And as always, look, if you've stuck around this far into the video, I appreciate you. And if you don't mind, hit that like button for me. You probably forgot to click it. I do it as well, but it does help out the channel. And with that, let's get into the next battle. All right, so this time, my opponent's going to end up leading off with the skinniest lizard of all time. Inteleon comes in, hand on the hip, being like, I am ready and locked and loaded to throw an Ice Beam right at your predicted Gligar lead. And that is unfortunate. Luckily, however, again, I said it before, these guys are best buddies. I can immediately switch right into the Cryogonal, who... you know, just takes everything that this thing wants to throw at me. Turns out they do just go for the Ice Beam, which is going to just basically feed me almost. And it doesn't do much. I am Assault Vested. Again, it doesn't hurt. I decided, you know, it's early in the match. Surely they don't stay in here, but I'm like, do I want to over-predict and make something crazy happen? Nope, I'm just going to click a Freeze Dry. Actually, no, just kidding. I clicked the Chilling Water. In comes the Armarouge, young Shoulder Pads. Regardless, I might as well have just clicked Freeze Dry because Chilling Water is mostly just there to drop attack and sometimes be enough damage on stuff, but it doesn't do much to this thing. And I realized that even though, you know, I can take a special attack, perhaps I have no really reason to stay in here. So guess what I do? I go right back into Gligar, baby. It turns out they're going to go ahead, bought me with an Aura Sphere, which did not expect. It's fine. It does less than if it were to go for an Armor Cannon, which is sweet. And now, as I realize, they probably swap out as well. I can take this opportunity to set up my Stealth Rock. The pace of play has been established. There's swapping going around. I'm going to be able to punish some switches. And what's great about this Stealth Rock setup is that now the next time that they bring back in Armarouge, it is not obviously, unless it's heavy duty boots for whatever reason, it's not going to enjoy the Stealth Rock chip. So, of course, I'm looking at this lizard thinking, I mean, either they flip turn or make the prediction of me going into the Cryogonal. I'm just going to do it anyway. I'm making the predictable play. They do end up going for the Snipe Shot this time. I'm going to do a bit more than an Ice Beam would, but that doesn't hurt, which is sweet because now here's the thing. I know that obviously the Armarouge is their swap in here. I laid down the groundwork of the Stealth Rock to hopefully help out this situation. Now, I go for the Freeze Dry because first of all, it covers for if the Inteleon stays in, but also as Armarouge swaps in, I know that it takes that Stealth Rock chip. The Freeze Dry is going to put it in range to where I'm thinking hopefully a Chilling Water can take care of it. And for whatever reason, freaking Cryogonal's fast as hell. I don't know what makes this thing fast, but it is. And I can now finish that off with a Chilling Water, which is quite satisfying. So down goes the Armarouge, which is always nice. But sadly, however, now I am met with a friggin' Transformer. It allows them to Revenge Switch right into the Metagross, and I am afraid this is probably the funniest sequence of first turn swapping where I'm just going to go right back into Gligar. There's no reason not to, truly. I feel cringe when I'm like just swapping back and forth, but I'm like, whatever. I'm going to do whatever it takes to win. They go for the Meteor Mash there. That does not do much because the Gligar is a champ. And at this point, I'm just going to click a knockoff. I don't imagine they stay in, but I'm going to go ahead and bop an item off of whatever wants to happen. They go Inteleon. This lizard needs to stop switching in and out. Says the guy who's doing the exact same thing. So at this point, Inteleon is free to, you know, threaten me. I'm like, you know what? Maybe they predict me to switch this time. I've been doing it all day. Nope, they just go for the Ice Beam. As I stay in, I'm punished for it. And I'm like, that's fine. I was bored of switching in between the stuff anyway. Down goes the Gligar, and what that does is at least opens up for some type of momentum here. Now, I am going to bring in the Hydrapple because, first of all, I'm like, you know, I can just go for the Terra Steel. And if they wanted to, surely this baits them into just clicking the Ice Beam. And while this thing's a little bit of an annoyance here, I can go for that Terra Steel, take an Ice Beam easily, bop him one with a little bit of a Draco Meteor or a Leaf Storm. I go for the Draco Meteor just to cover for, you know, any sort of switching, but I put the axe on my head. It turns out this team has a lot of Terra Steel. I definitely, a lot of my mons are weak to things that the steel helps out with. Now they do just click the Ice Beam, which is great. I do connect on a Draco Meteor, and that frail lizard is gonna die. So I take care of the Inteleon, which is always nice. Fast boy out of the way. And a lot of the time, this Hydrapple is supposed to like do these attacks on switches, and then my eject pack is supposed to give me the momentum. Most of the time it ends up hoeing me instead, because now that eject pack is gonna allow me to, while it is nice that I now don't have to deal with like my special attack dropped, I now have to go into whatever I want, and then they can, you know, decide what they want to bring in. As I go into Conkeldurr here, I figure, you know what, this Conkeldurr might just have a little bit of an opportunity. So this is, I don't know if I've talked about this Conkeldurr before. First of all, he's veiny. I've got Cinder Blocks and or whatever the hell, and I'm here to do some crazy shit. So first of all, they go Rillaboom here. It is gonna hit me with a drum beating, which is gonna hurt a lot. It smacks me a bit. It also drops my speed, which I forget about. But as I go for a Dynamic Punch, I connect. Now, Dynamic Punch there in this situation is supposed to miss the first time, right? I try to get it to miss so I can activate a Blunder Policy. We saw the Blunder Policy in the last match. That's what this thing is supposed to do, but I connect anyway, which is honestly not a bad downfall. I get the confusion, I get huge damage, but I get the confusion, which is cool. I'm hoping maybe it hits itself. Nope, it doesn't. It's able to break through, goes for the Acrobatics, takes care of the Conkeldurr, and that Conkeldurr is a weird set, right? It's supposed to get a Blunder Policy. I can set up with Bulk Up, and then if I miss a Dynamic Punch, activate a Blunder Policy, then I've got a Stomping Tantrum that doubles in power because my last move failed. Someday it might work, but honestly, today's day feels like it might just be time for Seviper to set up. I come up, the scales are glistening in the beach sunlight, and honestly, you gotta respect Seviper's model in this game. Thing looks sick as hell. So as I start going for a little Coil here, they're gonna bring in Rhyperior. Now, here's an interesting situation, right? I go for a Coil, which is obviously gonna give me my little attack and defense boost along with the accuracy to help out with my Gunk Shot, but since I got a defensive boost, that paired with the fact that there's grassy terrain on the field, if this thing wants to go for an Earthquake, I'm gonna let it happen, because I can first of all go for a Trailblaze. That's going to give me my speed boost, also increase damage from the grassy terrain. But as they do go for an Earthquake, I know that I can live that. And the reason for that is because when grassy terrain is on the field, Earthquake's damage is dampened by 50%, which is quite nice. So now one of the best parts about this situation is that whenever you can take advantage of clicking Trailblaze without having to just try to get the speed boost, it's in range to knock out the Rhyperior. So I can go for a second free Trailblaze. And with Seviper's speed now doubled, we're faster than everything they've got. I'm healed up because of my leftovers and the grassy terrain. So shout out to the Rillaboom for the terrain. Buddy really helped it out on that one. But you know, I'm coiled up. I'm Trailblazed the hell up. I'm eating some leftover. It's a good day to be the Snaky Boy. Now, it all comes down to if first of all they haven't committed their Terra yet, which I am afraid of. And as they end up bringing in the Salamence, I am worried about something like an Intimidate. It comes in, does take some Stealth Rock. And luckily it turns out it's not Intimidate, which is great because I'm able to outspeed. I can connect on a Gunk Shot, and a big purple blob to the face is gonna knock out the Salamence, which is quite nice. So hey, we take care of a very big threat. We're again just continuing to eat some leftovers, which I'm now obviously with the Coil. Physical attacks, I have a chance to take something. And as they end up bringing in the Metagross, buddy looks like the ground is lava. I don't like when this thing's model does that. But yeah, Metagross comes in, and obviously I can just Earthquake the thing. I'm hoping no Terra. Turns out they are going to go for the Terra, of course. And the Xbox is, we get to see what it's going to do. I'm thinking Terra Flying would be unfortunate. Turns out it's going to be Terra Stellar Terra. I sometimes forget that this even exists. What that does is going to give a Terra boost to each one of its attacks once, but what happens is also it does not get a defensive change. So an Earthquake is still super effective, Sadly, it's not quite going to be enough to knock it out. That allows it to now go for a Zen Headbutt, and plus with the boost, I wasn't feeling necessarily confident, but it gets a crit. I'm like, did that crit matter? It turns out, no, it most definitely did not. I would need a bunch of coils to take that. So sadly, as the Seviper goes down, we did put in some solid work with the guy, and now we got to see if we can just bring it home. So I decided to just bring in the Latios. I figure, you know what? I can take an attack from the thing. I could just bop it with an Earthquake and outspeed, and this Earthquake is going to do it. So the battlefield's cut the hell up. Earthquake takes care of the Metagross, and they just leave. So they were absolutely having none of that, and that's fine. It's the end of the game anyway, and that's chalk another one up for our Seviper fella. That thing put in some nice work there. So that's going to bring us now into one more bonus game because we're having some snaky fun around here today, and I figured why not see if we can get it to go again. We're going up against an all Gen 7 squad here, which is actually kind of interesting, and this turns out to be a pretty fun match. Without any further nonsense, let's just jump into it, huh? Alright, so this time my opponent's going to lead off with the Lycanroc. Common lead, probably going to just set up Stealth Rock. I've got myself the Gligar, who is, not immediately in Ice Beam danger, so that feels pretty good to be a friggin' Flying Scorpion guy. So I'm just going to set up my Stealth Rock. Turns out, however, I do get taunted. Always run the risk of being taunted whenever you're going up against Lycanroc, but there's no reason to not at least click it. So they taunt me. They're going to get that off, which is fine. And they're going to now set up their own Stealth Rocks. So now I'm taunted double here. They're like, yeah, you see that? You can't even do that. What do you think about that? Tried to set up my own Stealth Rock. They rub it in my face by setting up theirs. And now I decide to just go for the knockoff. Does get rid of a Focus Sash. And at this point, I figure might as well just Earthquake. I kind of figure they might just swap out, but I Quake anyway. Turns out they do just go for an Accelerock, which is sweet because an Earthquake just, it takes care of the Lycanroc. So satisfying, down goes the rock. And at this point, I do shake off the taunt as well. So I can set up my rocks if I want to. But of course, they're able to bring in whatever they want. Now, obviously, they're going into whatever threatens the Gligar here, which turns out to be young Primarina. And of course, you know the drill at this point with this squad. If Gligar doesn't want to take it, it turns out Craggle does. So I can go right into McFlurry and about McFuck you up. Now, they do just go for the Ice Beam here. Does nothing. And this thing is used to taking Ice Beams at this point. And I can now just Rapid Spin away the rocks. I figure they probably swapped the Primarina out, just worried about a Freeze Dry, but instead they stay in, and to my surprise, they do click the Calm Mind. And that makes things a little more interesting. As much as I want to try to conserve this Craggle as my special sponge, I'm now immediately met with the threat of like, all right, well, Freeze Dry is still going to do a decent chunk. Well, it gets that special attack and special defense boost. Freeze Dry is still going to get some considerable chip, and as they go for the Psychic Noise, that actually is going to hurt quite a bit, even through the Assault Vest. Prevents me from healing, doesn't matter. But what it also does is activates a Throat Spray. So now this thing gets another little special attack boost. Sitting at +2 special attack, I figure my best option here is just to stay in and continue to get damage. The great part about a Primarina, at least if you're going up against it, it's not fast. So it's like, as long as I can get enough damage on the thing, I should be in a spot to pick it off with something faster later. The problem is that I just need to kind of burn the Craggle here. So as they end up now going for the Draining Kiss, they get some health back, but it's not going to be enough to knock me out, which is actually great, because now as I can go for one more Freeze Dry, their Draining Kiss now is going to knock me out. Sometimes you got to plant a big old smooch right on the Snowflake, but what's great is that they don't get a lot of health back from that. So I've effectively kind of just traded the Craggle for this matchup. I got rid of the Stealth Rock. I was able to kind of eliminate the Primarina here. And what's also great is that a max speed Jolly Seviper is faster than some shit. It's not a lot, but it is faster than a Primarina. So I can bring this thing in. And also what's great is that it is in range for a Trailblaze to pick it off. Trailblaze is one of the great moves introduced to a lot of things movesets these days. If you can find it in a position to just knock something out and get that speed boost, that's all you can ask for. It is going to take care of the Primarina, which is great. That's a big threat out of the way. And now, as they decide to bring in the Mimikyu, I'm thinking to myself, why not just click a Coil here? While it could potentially go for a Swords Dance, a defense boost is going to put me in a spot where I might just be able to kind of win the setup wars here. So I go for the Coil, and while obviously this thing has its disguise still intact, it's always a problem. Mimikyu is always a problem, honestly. Whenever it's in the back, it's just such a momentum stopper that it's not only able to stop momentum, but it can just create momentum itself with that Swords Dance. So as I see them going for that Swords Dance, I'm now just going to Trailblaze. Best bet is just to break the disguise with the Trailblaze, kind of get the best value out of it. But of course, my worst fear is that it is going to be red cards. So since I touched the thing, that is going to force me out into a random teammate. And I'm like, oh, damn, I just got Mimikyu'd. So the worst part is, as it draws you into a random teammate, it brings in the worst possible one, which is going to be the Conkeldurr. So at least while I break this thing's disguise and neck, It continues to Swords Dance over here, and I'm not really willing to let Conk go down quite yet. Just do a Play Rough. It's going to outspeed. I can't really touch it with anything. This Conkeldurr moveset, it struggles with a lot, and a Ghost type is not ideal. So I decided I'm just going to go into the Gligar here. I can maybe take 2 attacks if I'm feeling crazy. Turns out a Play Rough is going to be probably just enough to finish me off here. And they do go for another one. That is going to take care of it. So honestly, that's fine. I use the Gligar here as essentially just a death fodder. And now I can go into whatever I want against this crazy asshole. So I'm thinking I have kind of I have 2 dragon types that can do a couple things here. First of all, I go into the Latios because my thought was that I could bait this thing into going for either Shadow Claw or a Shadow Sneak. I go for the Terra Steel. I forget to click the Terra Steel. I'm not gonna lie, I blew that one. I did not click the button. So down goes Latios to the Shadow Sneak, and that's unfortunate. I'm now down to 3 mons left, and things are looking pretty bleak. So, you know, one thing I can do though is go into second dragon type, who also has the Terra Steel. I will not be forgetting to click it this time. Praise God. And yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and put the axe on my head this time. So the great part about Terra Steel is, even though this thing has 2 Swords Dances, it should not be able to do too much to me here. So I can then, hopefully, if I miss this Leaf Storm, I will be taking a bath with a toaster. But I go ahead, I put the axe on the dome, and as they go for the Play Rough here, it does less than half, which is great for a +4 Mimikyu. I do connect on a Leaf Storm, which is amazing, and it doesn't knock it out. It lives it with like 2 HP. Absolutely busting my little apple balls over here. So the fun part is, while that activates my eject pack, it's also going to pair with Regenerator to now where the next time I come in, I'll be regenerated. I'm nearly at full health. So I know that Hydro Apple should be able to stop this Mimikyu from just cleaning up the match. But I figure if anybody has to come in, I'm just going to go Conkeldurr here. There still is a chance for Seviper to late game sweep. But I figure if anything wants to die to a Play Rough, probably just sack the Conkeldurr here. Turns out they missed the Play Rough, which happens way more than you would imagine. And that is great for me. That's a little bit of RNG luck on my side. I'm able to finish it off with a stomping tantrum. Jesus. So as the Lord Arceus has shined upon us today, I can now take this new life and see what I can do against the Kommo. As they go Kommo here, another incredibly scary setup mon. That's because the Clangorous Soul is a broken ass move. It can go for that, boosting every one of its stats at the mere cost of a quarter of its health. So, you know, it boosts absolutely everything. I figure why not just go for a Dynamic Punch, dude? I do connect on it, which is sweet, and I get a critical hit to knock it out. The RNG is actually unfair at this point. I mean, that thing would have had to deal with confusion at least. But hey, an Iron Fist boosted Dynamic Punch takes care of it, and that's exactly what we love to see. So Conkeldurr, while I switched this thing in essentially to die, I've now gotten some pretty incredible value out of it. So, well, that feels pretty good. Now they can go Decidueye here. I decided to just go into the Hydro Apple because I can take anything Decidueye wants to throw at me here. Turns out they do just go for the Brave Bird. Doesn't really hurt when you're now Steel type, which is great. And also they take a little bit of recoil for the road. But my plan here is basically just to Draco Meteor for as much damage, you know, as I possibly can here. So look, they've got 2 mons left. They have the Incineroar and the Decidueye. They do decide to swap into, shout out to Wolf's Incineroar here. This thing comes in. Sadly, with no Stealth Rock up, it comes in for free. But the good news is the Draco Meteor is going to be able to chunk the thing for some pretty great damage. Knocks it down almost to half, which is nice. But I figure I might as well just Earth Power here. Is honestly, I'm kind of playing toward my late game being the Seviper to clean things up. As they go for the Drain Punch here, it doesn't do much. It is super effective, but it just gets some health back. And especially since my special attack has dropped, a super effective Earth Power is, you know, not going to be any damage to write home about. So I figure, you know what, I might as well jumpstart the process. The good part about if I can bring Seviper in on the Incineroar is that it cannot really easily switch back in and intimidate me. So I'm like, you know what, if they're just going to continue to Drain Punch, I can go right into my Seviper here. They do just Drain Punch once again, right between the fangs. Doesn't hurt. That's fantastic because now, as Decidueye is the only thing they've got in the back, I feel like I'm in a spot to probably set up a Coil and maybe clean things up. It looked like the Seviper was going to be in a spot to go crazy earlier. Sometimes you got to play the late game. So I decide I can surely just Coil here. There's not really much that Incineroar can do in terms of damage here, especially if I get that defensive boost. A Flare Blitz wouldn't even hurt if that's its highest damage. I go for that Coil. We coiled the hell up. Turns out they're going to go for the Fire Punch. That's its second biggest fire damage without the recoil. So no Flare Blitz, going to go for the Fire Punch. Shout out to that because I can take that easily. And at this point, I can now go for a nice little super effective Earthquake. As they stay in, they can't really swap out. That is enough to take care of the Incineroar, which is amazing because now that I've had the Coil, it feels like I should be able to take an attack from the Decidueye and then clean things up with a little Gunk Shot. So that's the plan. I ate some leftovers, which is probably needed to, depending on what kind of, you know, coverage this thing's got. In comes the Decidueye. And also, I have a chance to be faster depending on how this thing's built. Also, my game my game's been doing that lately, bro. I don't know what half the screen goes out. They go for the Spirit Shackle. I barely hang on, which is amazing because then I can go for a Gunk Shot. I obviously connect because of the Coil, and that is going to take care of the Decidueye. And I don't know what happened to my game there, but I can assure you the Seviper clutched it the hell out there, and that's going to do it for the game. So, you know, Seviper almost set things up early, finished it off like the true champion that it is. And that's going to do it for the video. Thank you guys very much for watching. For real, the support on these videos is amazing. I do appreciate each and every one of you. And I will catch you next time. Peace out.